Hello, everyone. Welcome to TALRadio. This is me, RJ Saankhya, and I'm thrilled to be your host for today's interview as we get to talk about something as significant as life changing. So, stem cell donation is a vital and life saving act and has the potential to make a tremendous impact on the health and well being of people around the world. By donating your stem cells, you have the power to give hope to those in need of a transplant and potentially save their life. But where do we find people who need stem cells and where do you look out for donors? Asian American Donor Program does the work here. So, Asian American Donor Program, AADP in short, is a community based nonprofit organization specialized in conducting outreach and donor registration drive ins with diverse communities. It is dedicated to increasing the availability of potential stem cell donors for patients with life threatening diseases curable by a stem cell transplant. So, to know more about this organization, we have to talk to Carol Gillespie, Executive Director at AADP, who has worked for the organization for more than 3 decades now. So, Carol always looks for innovative ways to educate the Asian American community about the need of adult stem cell donation. And I'm pretty sure that you will be fascinated to see how passionate Carol is for the work she does. So, let's dive in and let me welcome Carol Gillespie to the show. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited for the talk.
Yeah, we too. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I had a cold, but I hope my voice is not crackly. So,
No, it's beautiful. Don't worry. Yeah. So you have been with AADP for 33 years now, which is quite a long time. So, what was your inspiration to be involved in a stem cell donation organization, and what made you stick to it for so many years?
there were two patients in the Asian American community at the same time who needed a stem cell transplant or were diagnosed with leukemia. And at that point, there were only 123 Asians listed on the National Marrow Donor Program registry, which is now Be the Match. And they didn't even distinguish between what ethnicity they were. They were just listed as Asian. And we know that there's no such thing as an Asian. You're Vietnamese, you're Japanese, you're Korean, you're South Asian, whatever. So and your antigens are completely different. They're different people. So when they looked in the registry to see if they could find a potential donor to save these two people, it was daunting for them. 123 Asians, they weren't going to find a donor. So they asked a few people that they knew in the community that were very active in the community, what should we do? So we decided, along with Jonathan Leong, who is the founder of Asian American Donor Program, let's build a registry or a recruitment agency to register potential donors, educate the community about the need, and register those interested in helping to save a life. And that's how we were born or created. And we would go out and raise money like crazy because we had to pay for our own tissue typing at that point. And it was like $150 at that time, 33 years ago. And we saw the success slowly, and we really made a difference, not only in the community. We saw the response in the community that they really loved this program, and they saw that lives were being saved. But not only that, on the medical side, the National Marrow Donor Program at that point realized that it's important to build a more diverse registry so that more people will have that opportunity for their lives to be saved. And as medicine progresses, you find out that it's important to have a diverse registry because the Asian community, or let's say Vietnamese person, will not match someone that's Caucasian. And you learn these things as you go along. So my interest was captured in the beginning, and then it continued because of this progress, I guess, and the success stories and the sad stories I never wanted to see someone pass away because they couldn't find a donor. So that kept my interest along the way. And I didn't start out as the executive director. I started out as a board member and a volunteer. And then I was the project administrator. And then I eventually became the executive director. So, just progress.
That's wonderful. So, tell us, what is the role of AADP in stem cell donation, and how does this organization function?
So, the Asian American Donor Program, what we did, because we have a new role now, what we did was the last 33 years, we have gone out to the community and educated anyone that would listen. We would go to corporations, churches, community-based organizations, pretty much anywhere you worked, lived, worshiped, or played, and educated you about the need for bone marrow donation or stem cell donation. And then we would register those individuals that were interested in helping save a life, and they would join the Be the Match registry. And we did this for 33 years. And then the Be the Match registry decided that they wanted to keep their own branding. So now what we have evolved into is an organization that supports the patients and the patient's needs. So we continue to empower the patient by helping them tell their story in the community, empowering the community to learn more about the need for the stem cell donation and why these patients need their stem cells and what it means to the donor as well, and how easy it is to donate your stem cells or bone marrow. Stem cells mainly because bone marrow doesn't happen as often as stem cell collection. And so we empower these patients, and so it's all based on mainly social media now and using our influence with some of our database or our followers, and helping these patients, help guide these patients through the transplant procedure and until they reach transplant.
That really sounds like wonderful work out there. So AADP is a community-based nonprofit, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. How exactly does that work? I mean, why is it specifically Asian American community?
Well, because when the registry started, they mainly were registering a lot of Caucasians. I think it's because Caucasians are used to donating either their money or being involved in volunteer projects. And I think the ethnic minority community was not so involved in volunteering or donating a part of their body. You could talk about a lot of reasons why that might be possible or why that is. Maybe it's cultural, maybe it's because they're newly immigrated to the United States and it's just not part of their culture, or there's other issues that social economic issues why they don't donate. So, but I think it's mainly just an educational opportunity to explain how easy this is, and then more people are willing to come forward. So the reason why we started it is because we saw that there were only 123 Asians, and at that time I think there were like 60,000 Caucasians. So the disparity was very clear to us that the need was there for Asian Americans to register. And same thing with Hispanic and African American Black community. The need was there, but our community, the community we worked in the need for the Asian American community, that's because that's the community we were in. We focused on that community, and that is a very large community. So to go back, the Vietnamese community, a Vietnamese person would not probably match someone who is Japanese. So when you talk about the Asian American community, that is a very diverse community. You've got Vietnamese, Japanese, Korean, and so on. So that's in each community you have to educate and focus on each community in a different way. Not every community learns or wants to be educated in the same way. Language differences, cultural differences. So it was a challenge for us to educate in the Asian American community because of those differences in the different communities. So it was a big challenge, but the diversity was very important in the registry so that we could serve the Asian American community at large.
Great. So I'd like to know that there are so many misconceptions around, right? So
Yes.
what are some of the misconceptions people have about stem cell donation, and how would you like to address them? Like, can you burst the myths for us?
Yeah. So you keep talking about stem cell collection, which is great, but I want people to know that bone marrow collection still does happen, although it's very little, 25 to 30% of the time. And mainly bone marrow collection goes to the children. And because you can't collect a whole lot of bone marrow. So that goes to children under 18, so maybe infants and smaller adults. But stem cell collection is very, very simple, and you can collect a lot from an adult, and so that they give the stem cells to the adults. The misconception is that it's painful. Well, it is uncomfortable, so it's not pain-free, but they give you a local anesthetic in your hip area to draw out some of the stem cells. But you have maybe an hour of time that you're uncomfortable. And then there's just some soreness in your hip, maybe about a week at that time. But the patient, I can't even tell you what the patient goes through for that very little bit of discomfort that you might have for that hour. So I think I would say it's more uncomfortable than it is painful. So that is a misconception for sure. The other thing is that stem cells naturally regenerate, so they're back in your system, so you're losing nothing. So a lot in the Asian community, a lot of people believe in the Asian community that you shouldn't give a part of yourself, so that when you pass away and you go to the next life, that you should be whole. Well, you're going to be whole because your stem cells are naturally regenerating every day anyway. So what we collect from you, so what we do is we give you filgrastim, and it's an injection, and it mass produces these stem cells that we need, little proteins that sit on your white cells. So we're producing these stem cells and collecting them. So you're missing nothing, and your stem cells naturally produce anyway. So you're missing absolutely nothing. So you're going to go to the next life whole. So that's a misconception that you're losing part of your body that you're not going to get back. And the same thing for bone marrow. Bone marrow naturally regenerates, so it's back in your system within 2 weeks. So again, you're missing nothing. It's still there. You're going to get it all back. So those are the main misconceptions right there.
That's absolutely a very important, piece of information. The more people are aware of it, the better it is. So thank you for that. Now, please let us know about the kind of individuals who need the stem cells, and how do you ensure that the donor cell reaches its perfect match?
So the Be the Match registry is a big database, and what we don't necessarily look for your name and age and all that stuff. What we really look for is your HLA antigens. There are like 10 or 12 that are super important for matching. So what we do is we put the patient's HLA antigen, human leukocyte antigens, in this registry, and they do a massive search at the end of during the day. And so at the end of the day, they come up with some potential matches. And these 10 or 12 antigens, they would love for every one of them to match for a perfect match. Unfortunately, in the ethnic minority community, you're not, but you'd be lucky to get a perfect match. Or maybe you'd get one or two. In the Caucasian community, you might get 80 or 100 perfect matches. So this is why it's very important that anybody who is an ethnic minority, it's very important that they register if they're inclined to, or educate themselves a little bit more. So then let's say you get 2 or 3 potential matches. I say potential because they need to do a little bit more research on these donors. So initially they look like they're pretty good matches. So they would call these donors up and say, Be the Match would call these donors up and say, hey, you look like you've matched this patient in need. This patient's like, I don't know, 12 years old, and it looks like you've matched on some of the antigens. Can you come in for some further blood work? Sure, I'll come in. And so they do further blood work on it. And then that identifies if they are indeed a good match, or if they're kind of a mismatch. In other words, some of the antigens just really don't match up. And then if they do, then they have a physical, and then the patient or the donor still has an opportunity to say, no, I'm not really interested. Or they can say, yes, I'm signing on that dotted line. I'm going to donate and help save the life of this patient. So not until that point are they considered the donor for the patient in need. And 50% of the people that are registered and are a potential match say no. So this is a critical point. So this patient has gone through chemotherapy. And by the way, if a patient is in need of a stem cell or bone marrow transplant, this is their last effort to live. They don't select, they aren't a candidate for bone marrow or stem cell transplant if it's a good option. It's their only option of surviving. So when a donor says, no, I am not interested actually in donating after all. I was interested in donating to Sally Joe because her campaign was online, but I'm not really interested in donating to this person, even though they don't know who that person is. That is devastating to the patient. They know they have a perfect match, but the donor said no. So I want to make it very clear that this is the last effort for these patients. It's not, well, maybe this will save your life. It will save their life if this donor goes forward. So there's many steps involved in making sure that this donor is the perfect match, because what they do is they deplete all the patient's complete immune system. So when they do that, it's kind of like bringing the patient 2 weeks to death, and they call it recovery, because that patient's stem cells is bringing that donor's stem cell is bringing that patient back to life. So they deplete the patient's immune system. You can't survive without immune system, and the donor's cells replace the patient's immune system. So that donor is clearly saving that patient's life. Absolutely. So it's kind of recovery is what they call it. That, I don't think donors realize how critical that is. So the matching criteria is very, very important and critical. So they have to look at each antigen to make sure it is very specific. And it's not likely that you will donate if you registered. It's rare that you would actually be called to donate, because you have to match on all of these, let's say 10 or 12 antigens. So it's not common that you're going to actually save someone's life. So
yeah, that's really should be a hard job for you guys to do it, and you're still doing it. You're matching the donors, and I really appreciate that. Apart from the stem cell donation, is there any monetary donation that is required? And if yes, please let us know the potential donor. What can they do for this?
Is there any other what type of donation?
Monetary donation.
Oh,
the funds.
Monetary.
Yeah.
So the donor doesn't have to donate any money. I mean, the registration is free, their testing is free, everything is paid for 100%. So the donor will never have to pay for anything. Even if the donor has to fly to another state to donate their bone marrow or stem cells to a patient in need, everything is paid for, even if a loved one goes with them for support, which we recommend. So the donor will never have to pay for anything. So as far as AADP goes, we would love, obviously we do fundraising throughout the year, and we look for donations as well to help support, our program and support the patients in need. we pay for a lot of advertising and support patients, like I said, in need. So I always do fundraising and welcome certainly monetary donations, but the donor will never have to pay a dime for anything if they are actually called to donate their stem cells to a patient.
Yeah. So what should be the procedure for a potential donor who wants to fund? Is there a procedure, like they can visit a website or anything?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, aadp.org, and there's a little donation button right up at the top, and they're welcome to donate online if they'd like. If they want to send a check, they can do that. Our address is on the website as well, down at the bottom. They can do that. We have Venmo. We're on Venmo. They can just look us up. So yes, we would love that. Yeah. Some people actually do fundraisers on Facebook for us as well. That's been pretty popular.
Yeah, done. So I'm interested to know what kind of compliments does this organization gets to hear, and I'd love to hear some success stories.
I have one just a couple of days ago. It was Luke Doe's 23rd birthday. So Luke is an amazing little boy. Well, was an amazing little boy. He's now 23 years old. But when he was 18 months old, he was diagnosed with juvenile leukemia. And what's really interesting about Luke is he's Japanese, Vietnamese, and Caucasian. That's his ethnicity. Extremely difficult. Now we're talking, you have about, I'd say 50, maybe 55% chance of finding a donor if you're 100%, say, Vietnamese or 100% Japanese, depending, or 100%, let's say, Chinese. But someone who is multi-ethnic like that, I would say they have maybe a 10% or a 5% chance of finding a donor. Now, this was 21 years ago, which I would say his odds were much worse than that. And we had a major campaign for him because we knew that his chance of finding a donor was very, very slim because of his heritage. And so we worked really hard. I think we donated, or we registered like 5,000 or 10,000 donors for him. And that was a lot back then, 21 years ago, for one particular patient. He ended up finding a donor a year later, and Randy was his donor, and he's 100% Japanese, which we were surprised that he ended up being the donor because he was 100% Japanese, no other ethnicity. And so because of Randy, he was a sergeant in the police department in Seattle. Luke is able to celebrate his 23rd birthday just on the 22nd of this month. So, and his father and mother both are internal medicine physicians, and they were shocked and didn't understand leukemia, and just were in awe of everything that was happening and the generosity of the community and the people that registered. And today, his dad, Dr. Doe, still champions AADP for fundraising and other things. So it does a lot of educational and outreach for us. So that was a wonderful success story. We have many to talk about, but that one just comes to mind because we celebrated his 23rd birthday.
That's so wonderful. I'm really touched with this example. So yeah, wonderful. So along with so much work responsibilities, there must be a lot of challenging stuff that must be a part of this profession, right? So for you as an executive director, what is the most challenging part?
I would say the most challenging part for me is keeping the staff motivated. They are motivated, oddly enough, by the sad stories, because they want to keep going for those sad stories, the people that have passed and they weren't able to help them find a donor, although we aren't responsible for that. But they work so hard for these patients in the community that when someone passes, they struggle with that. But they struggle with it because they've tried so hard to make sure that the community understands the need, and they want to find a donor for that patient so bad. But they struggle with that, but yet it also motivates them. So trying to keep them motivated because of that, I think, is the hardest part. And I think the other thing is when people say no, that they don't want to register. I think the staff, the recruiters have a hard time with that. But I just tell them this program is not for everyone. And that's okay. You know, if people have other health issues, they have other concerns, and it's okay if they don't want to register. I would rather they don't register now if they are on the fence, and just learn a little bit more about it. And if they want to register later, okay. But I'd rather they don't actually join the registry if they're on the fence, because they'll just end up saying no, and that will hurt patients in the future. But they have a different view. They have a view that maybe if they register, then with further education, they'll change their mind, and I'm not so sure about that. So those are, I think, my two biggest challenges going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's wonderful how you still deal with them with lots of energy. So yeah, we're close to wrapping up, and I would like to ask you if you want to tell anything to the audience, before we leave.
Well, I would certainly like people to learn more about bone marrow and stem cell collection. I think it's the procedure now is so simple, and even if you aren't interested in registering, if you could just learn a little bit more, go to our website and learn about the patients. You don't hear the gory details of about what a patient goes through, but just try and learn. And I think connecting with one another is key. Being an active listener, and just really understanding what people are going through. I think there isn't a whole lot of empathy in the community, especially these days, and I think it's super important, and I think it's what the community needs now. And I know that we're inundated with a lot of needs and requests, but these patients did not ask for blood cancer, and the cure is in you, and it's the only cure. So just educate yourself a little bit more. And if you're interested in registering, then just go to our website and click on register now and go ahead and do it. You have to be 18 to 40, but I'll tell you, saving somebody's life, you're a hero for the rest of your life.
That's so wonderful. Yeah, that's so wonderful. And I'm happy we could be a part of the awareness that we can spread. So yeah, thank you, Carol. We're really grateful that you took out some time and tell us about stem cell donation. And we cannot get accurate information than this. And I really wish your organization grows beyond its limits and save more lives. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you for the platform, the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. So that was Carol Gillespie, Executive Director of Asian American Donor Program. So yeah, I hope you find this interview insightful. For more such interviews, stay tuned to TALRadio, powered by Dr. Life Foundation. And this is me, Saankhya, signing for today. Take care, you all.